Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, moving ahead quickly, changing gears. Phil Berg cannot be with us today. We'll get him next week for an update on the Obama birth certificate stuff. What we do have is, remember that Donald Trump on The View had been talking about Obama's lack of a birth certificate. We also have the interesting fact, Michelle Bachmann, not our favorite person, but nevertheless, Michelle proving once again Leibniz's rule that evil can do good. That's the only way the world survives. Michelle Bachmann has gone into Iowa to set up a campaign organization, and she has chosen her Iowa campaign rep is somebody who's interested in the birth certificate issue. We don't put our hand into the fire for this person because he wants you to pay your taxes in silver and gold. Man, talk about tax increases. That would be a lollapalooza of a tax increase if you had to pay your taxes in gold dollars. But the primary positive element is that the Iowa rep for Bachmann is going to agitate this issue of the birth certificate. It guarantees that this issue will remain in the public eye, especially as Bachmann apparently is about to declare a presidential candidacy. But now, let's shift gears and go into domestic politics. We have to talk about economic program. We have to talk about the class struggle, class consciousness, the Wall Street sales tax related issues. We're lucky to have with us today a brilliant young labor lawyer coming out of the universities and law schools now. We have a new generation here, a new representative. This is somebody people know. Dan Abramson was, of course, prominent in the 9/11 issue. His website, False Flag News, was a very prominent one. Dan, like the rest of us, now turning more attention into these questions of economic program and what to do to get out of the world economic depression, since that is now the main issue. So let me welcome Dan Abramson.
It's an absolute pleasure, Webster, and I want to congratulate you on the brilliant work you've done on Libya and the strategic analysis of these color revolutions. You're absolutely trend-setting here. It's phenomenal.
Well, that's very kind of you. But now, I think you've been doing some research into the Wall Street sales tax and related issues. Why don't you tell us what you've been finding, any way you'd like to get into it?
Yeah, I think, Webster, the best way to do this is to start with a history, because when I talk to people about taxing derivatives, they think it's a far-flung idea, that it's something that's very impossible. So actually, let me start by saying, why do we do it? What we're facing right now is this austerity demagogy, which is very much funded by the reactionary forces of the Koch brothers and other associated affiliates, but you find it also in the Democratic Party as well, including inside the Obama administration. The notion is that the primary concern of our economy is debt. We need to pay off the bondholders, pay off the debt. And in order to do this, they're going to cut taxes for the wealthy, put in regressive taxes on the poor, and cut services for the middle class and the working class in this country. So I think what we need is a programmatic alternative to that and to the union bust, which we're seeing not only with Scott Walker. We're seeing it with Governor Snyder in Michigan. We're seeing it with Jerry Brown in California. We're going to see it in Pennsylvania. We've seen it with Butch Otter in Idaho, where they're rather stripping the collective bargaining rights of the union, in effect, an illegal move, and also basically busting the union down to nothing, and also saying that unions are going to have to take pay cuts when the unions are already so beaten down in this country. So we need to think, what is the programmatic alternative to this austerity demagogy? And my proposal here, and I'm very much piggybacking off of your ideas, is derivatives tax, a tax on financial speculation, which is not at all productive, but is rather very much a parasitic vacuum on the real productive economy. So if I may, I'll begin with just a brief history. The idea of a derivatives tax has much precedent in U.S. law. Nationally, up until 1965, there was something called the stamp tax, which was a small tax on the sale or purchase of stocks or debt instruments, which was usually about 0.1% or less. They stopped doing this up until in 1965. The idea was revived in 1987 with Speaker of the House Jim Wright. Lloyd Benson, who was head of the Senate Finance Committee and later Secretary of the Treasury, brought it up in 1990 and 1994, but it never came back. They were talking about bringing back a 0.5% securities transfer tax. So this had been done. They've stopped it. Prominent people brought it up again, but it hasn't happened. At the state level, we see that it's also actually on the books right now. Webster, you've talked a lot about this New York tax law. I've got the law in front of me right now. The New York tax law, Section 270.1, provides that all sales or agreements to sell, transfers of shares or certificates of stock in any foreign or domestic corporation are subject to the transfer tax, which is between 1 and 5 cents per share, with a maximum tax of $350. This has been ruled constitutional by the Supreme Court in Boston Stock Exchange v. State Tax Commission, 1977 Supreme Court case. This tax alone brings in $16 billion with a B dollars a year for the state of New York, but Governor Cuomo and other governors before him have given this back to Wall Street instantly with a rebate with a form called an MT 650. Now, the state shortfall in New York is a few $billion. If they were just to actually apply this tax, New York would be running at least a $10 billion surplus. So I think what we need to first understand is there is tremendous legal precedent on the books, and then I want to go into how we can build upon this and expand it.
Quickly, Dan, go ahead.
Okay, I'll continue. Yeah, so in Illinois, what we have is Representative Mary Flowers, who's trying to do 100% on all transactions carried out by the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. This is far too weak. I want to talk about the Dodd-Frank bill, which in many ways was a very weak, watered-down bill, but there is much hope. Title VII, Section 716 requires that all swaps be cleared as long as the CFTC or SEC require them to be. Now, Geithner and Bernanke and Mary Shapiro and Gary Gensler are working to weaken these rules, but the law is on our side here, and it's not particularly ambiguous. These credit default swaps must be cleared. Now, I think what we need to understand is the magnitude of what's being traded here. There are estimates that at least $4 quadrillion are being traded every year in these derivatives. That's not just my number. I'm reading that from CNN Money Magazine, which when they talked about the New York Stock Exchange merger with the German Bourse, they were saying that it's part of a $4 quadrillion market. There's evidence. $4 quadrillion
of turnover.
$4 quadrillion in turnover. Now, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and CBOT do $1 quadrillion in turnover a year. Another clearinghouse called DTCC, $2 quadrillion just in 2007. So it may actually be higher than $4 quadrillion. Webster, I know you often say 1.5 quadrillion. It's actually likely higher than that.
Well, the 1.5 quadrillion is total derivatives in existence at any time.
Exactly, right.
The turnover is obviously more because that's the buying and selling of the existing derivatives or new ones.
And so with the derivatives, because these aren't cleared, what we have to do is look at data points and sort of piece them together. We know it's many quadrillions. Now, I think what's important to understand here is if we did a 1% tax on this $4 quadrillion, 1% tax on 1 quadrillion would be $10 trillion, split 50-50 with the states and the federal government. Not only are the deficits and the debt gone, but we can rebuild with a new Works Progress administration and begin rebuilding the infrastructure of this country.
Dan, we're out of time. Come back next week and give us another installment, okay?
Thank you very much, Webster. It's an honor.
See you next week.